This is it, the car that was first unveiled at the Frankfurt Motor Show 48 years ago, the iconic Mark 1 Golf GTI. This is not a Golf, but it does have a GTI badge, and Volkswagen tonight have confirmed this will be an icon living on for future generations. This is based on the platform, the MEB platform of the ID2, which we unveiled on the channel way back in March. And Andy Mint, the designer of the car, who is like a kid at Christmas, he's worked in Bentley and Audi before his role as head of design in Volkswagen, unveiled the car a little bit to us earlier on. So what do you know about it so far? Well, the design differences between this and a typical Golf GTI is the overhangs are much shorter. So the wheels, that basically means the wheels go right into the corner of the car. We know it will be front wheel drive, but it also has a specific type of electrical limited slip differential, which has a control module in the car, which means you can switch between different modes, and there'll be different characteristics of previous generation GTIs that you'll be able to get a sense of how they drove, and that will be reflected in how the ID2 GTI will also drive. How that's quite going to work and will it feel quite fake, only time is going to tell. Also inside the vehicle, we obviously have no way of knowing. We just have kind of stock images of how they perceive the interior to end up looking like. But the dials, you'll be able to make them look like the retro vintage dials of a Mark 1 Golf GTI. The Rabbit gear shifter with the golf ball, obviously there's no gear stick in these cars now, so what happens is they've moved the golf ball to a central column unit, which they'll be able to use, as far as I can tell, different modes of the car. But again, there's nods and there's kind of links back to all generations of previous Golf GTIs that will be reflected in this car. For example, obviously there wouldn't be a GTI without a red grille on the front, but these alloys are meant to have a nod back to the alloys of the Mark 1 Golf GTI, particularly these parts here. There's also a golf ball effect on the alloys. The Mark 1 had a plastic front splitter, and that will fit on this car as well. So it's like the heritage of the GTI has been interwoven massively into this car. Like a lot of these world premieres, there's people, everybody just trying to get a first look at the car. Will these make it into the actual production vehicle? Quite possibly. They're a little bit unusual in terms of design for what Volkswagen are currently doing, but this is a glimpse into the future. This car will not be on sale until 2025. The side splits going down the side of the car again, that was something that we saw in the Mark 5 GTI. The honeycomb that again was first on a Mark 5 GTI will be displayed in certain parts of the car, and there's all these nods like the dark tints on the clusters. It wasn't a Golf GTI unless they were darkened compared to a standard model of the car. Yes, we're getting a boot spoiler, again it just has to be, but this side here was again something we saw in later generations of Volkswagen's iconic 3-letter hot hatch. Don't know about performance, all we do know is, as I mentioned, it'll be front wheel drive. Will it be 250 brake horsepower? That's kind of where the last performance versions of the Golf GTI have ended up. There was always a bit of a gap between that and a Golf R, and you know the Golf R is not going to be a thing in the not too distant future, so will that gap be as important anymore? Down here there's a couple of quirky things in this car. The concept vehicle, like there's a little electrification sign here. Shut trunk before flight is displayed under the spoiler. I don't know if they're actually going to make it into the finished product of the car, but just little quirky fun bits of the vehicle. And over the wheel arches, something that always differentiated the GTI from normal Golfs was everything was color coded. Now they've kind of embraced that into the body. But it is interesting with the overhangs and just how far, like on the ID2 standard car, how far the wheel came out to the edge. I mean, the offset is really, really impressive on how much that stands out and just makes a difference. There's so much tech going to be on board in this vehicle. Tartan seats look like they will make a comeback. They were a bit controversial. Again, made it into the Mark 1 Golf, came back into the Mark 5 if you didn't get leather seats. The tartan seats made a comeback. The steering wheel, the 3 spokes on that, will be a little centerpiece down the bottom, quite like the Mark 1 Golf GTI. So I think the effort, on paper anyway, looks like they really have put it in to make this car have the heritage of previous Golf GTIs. Exciting enough, because that's possibly something that Volkswagen are a little bit guilty of the last few years. Yes, they're rolling out multiple electric vehicles, but do they capture excitement? And I remember a couple of years ago at the launch of the ID.5, we were at dinner with some of the designers from Volkswagen, and we were lamenting about, you know, the end of the GTI, because the Golf GTI wasn't going to be a thing in the not too distant future. And they didn't really say much to us whether it was going to be a thing or they were going to let this three-letter icon die off. But thankfully today, we know for sure that's not going to happen. This badge will light up white in the production version of the car, we do know that. And unlike a lot of concept cars, I mean, yes, it does say ID GTI concept on it, but this is a car that will be made. This will be potentially on in Irish showrooms by the end of 2025. If the ID2 comes out first, then the GTI version. Typically that's what happened with the Golf in previous generations. The Golf would come out and then the GTI version would surface a little bit later on. So what do you think of it? It's certainly pretty cool looking. Yes, it's not going to sound like a GTI. I love that they've made it front wheel drive. I love some of the ideas that they're going to make this reminiscent of how the previous generation Golf GTIs drove. Remains to be seen how synthetic that will feel though. That's an important point to make. No idea on price as well. So front wheel drive, very much retroness from previous generations interwoven into this car. And it should be, by all accounts, as a bit of a hoot to drive if it stays true to what a GTI should be. And I get the sense from Andy, the designer, and other people in Volkswagen that they really do want this car to be a bit special, and they want fans of the GTI to lust after this car as much as they would have with previous generations in the Golf. Let me know your thoughts. What do you think of it? Would you buy it? Have you had a Golf GTI? Are you in your 40s and 50s now and it was a car you had growing up? Would you get into one of these then, albeit an electrified version of it? Comments down below. Thank you very much for all the support. If you do want to support what is a fully independent YouTube channel, you can hit me up on buymeacoffee.com/Nobby on Cars. And I'll bring you lots of content from IAA Mobility, which is on here in Munich this week. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll talk to you in the next one.